welcome to the Dr. Joe Show. I am so delighted to have you here. It's remarkable that we have to talk about this topic at all, as if there's something wrong with gender affirming care. So where do we want to start?
Well, as I said to Brianna and Alana before we started, what's old is new again.
Yeah.
This is a pattern of harassment that is very familiar to all parties. And it starts with a story called GamerGate.
Yeah, which actually a lot of it happened right here in Massachusetts. So one of the biggest events that really defines the modern political discourse, and more specifically how that discourse has been poisoned, is an event from 2014 known as GamerGate. And to tell the long and short of it, women in the game industry were targeted with a really extreme set of harassment for asking for better working conditions in the field. There was a independent game developer here in Massachusetts by the name of Zoe Quinn. She had some utterly fake allegations made up about her by the fringe parts of the internet. And that kind of exploded with this hate and harassment campaign online. What we didn't know about it at the time was that GamerGate was the playbook for how we argue on the internet. One of the people primarily behind GamerGate was Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, as we all know, helped Trump get into the White House. And today we've seen this exact same playbook used in this particular instance, the GamerGate playbook being used by the Libs of TikTok account to basically get this propaganda about trans healthcare out there to literally millions of people, put it in these just really sensational, angry, hateful, fake information terms, and get people so riled up that literally you have Boston's Children's Hospital shut down with bomb threats. So, it's the technical word for it is stochastic terrorism. And the truth is, we've been talking about this since 2014, and it's not getting better. And there's a long history of why it's not getting better, which is very specifically because of certain policies that have failed to take this kind of extremist rhetoric seriously.
So Brianna, what is the game book? I mean, the playbook then of this.
Sure. So what they did to me is, Dr. Joe, if I went through your entire life, I'm sure I could find something to attack you with to make you seem like a terrible person, right?
Even today, absolutely.
It's just no one can withstand this. So the problem is so much of our lives are online today that they can go and, I don't know if you have written academic papers, or they could look through your academic history or every social media post you've ever made, every tweet you've ever had. How about everything you said on this show, and find little 15-second clips and then have an entire mob to take that and then to turn you into a shadow version of yourself. Like this really dark version that's scheming or lying, or they find stuff to take out of context and to attack you with. And, the truth is they're trying to make the cost of speaking up so high that it's simpler to just say, stay silent. So what you see on the trans healthcare issue is this exact playbook. You've got doctors out there trying to have just medical discussions about how do we help trans kids. What's the best course of action for healthcare? We don't have a clear course of action on this yet. Professionals are trying to have their own discussion and figure out how to proceed, and their free speech is being impinged upon by this mob. And it's very, very frustrating. I think it fundamentally threatens us as a democratic society.
The problem is that they're very effective propagandists, and they've been at this for a long time. They've got a lot more practice, I would say, than the trans community does, for instance. And they've also got the advantage of, decades of fear mongering about trans people built into our culture, like just baked in. So that's I think that's a factor as well.
And what has that fear consisted of? What do you think?
Well, I mean, think about the villains in half of the slasher flicks in the 80s and 90s. Instead of it started with Psycho. The whole like, oh well, there's this person who is assigned male, but they dress up like a woman and kill people. And for some reason that just became like a meme within horror movies. Is like, if there's a serial killer, it's not exciting unless they're wearing a skirt, I guess. So it's sort of, I mean, I can't tell you how many times growing up, I had people compare me to Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. And this was, the 90s. So that was like a big deal, that was a new movie at the time. So there is this like this concerted effort to paint trans women, especially the trans community at large, but trans women especially, as somehow predatory and dangerous. And against that backdrop, these sort of right-wing, I would say outright fascist propagandists have they've prepped the battlefield for decades in advance.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said. I mean, it is, trans people are the target du jour. And I think it comes back to, this question. So I didn't grow up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Mississippi. And something I saw in Mississippi was very much this fear that people are coming to take away your culture, right? So in the video game industry, the idea was, women, those feminists, they're coming to take away our culture. And I think what we're seeing in the same way with the trans debate is it's this fear that because you have some people that, need to basically get healthcare to live more authentic lives, I think there's a real fear by certain elements in our society that they're coming to take away a culture or things that, basically a way of living that is very important to some people. So I think we're seeing a really sensationalistic backlash against that. More specifically with libs of TikTok, what is so troubling is the rhetoric. I think that even though I don't agree with them, people that have, they're skeptical of trans civil rights, I think to a certain extent, there's a free speech issue there. What's really concerning about libs of TikTok is they're taking that from a discussion to stochastic terrorism because they're dehumanizing everyone involved in the discussion. And it's not this doctor is providing healthcare, it's this doctor is disfiguring children. This doctor is, these people are groomers.
This
They're
thing is
sexually
teaching your
intentional.
child.
Yeah, right. All of that. So they're dehumanizing the other part of the debate that is really pushing it in a way that is leading to violence. And like we saw with the Boston Children's Hospital being shut down with the bomb threat.
And if I can sort of add an addendum to that, it definitely follows the same reactionary pattern of speaking to the fears of lower and middle class white people about they are coming for your children. When they talk about the destruction of culture, it's not just the it's they're tearing down your Confederate monuments. They're mutilating your children and making them think it's okay to be queer, which you just can't do that. It's my own experience. I grew up in South Carolina in a holiness church. My parents go to church 5 times a week. And, I kind of got disowned because the church was more important than their kid. But I'm very familiar with that line of thinking where there's good and evil. And, it's a very black and white value system. And you find that over time, they do begin to make exceptions for certain things like divorce, like that's okay, that can be excused, but being queer, being trans, that's even worse. You're basically a demon. So they use the same sort of fear mongering, the same they speak to the same anxieties. It's always about your kids are being led astray. These people are Pied Pipers. They're going to destroy everything you've ever stood for. and they speak to those fears. And it's like you said, the dehumanizing of trans and queer people. It's decades old, centuries at this point, I would say.
Stretch the canvas, brush with